Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us once again. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and I hope all of you are having a great day as we kick things off here. In the first segment of the show, we are going to be talking to Mr. Dave Room. He's with Edutainment, and of course, he's an author of a book. But not just any book, children's books are great, and, I'm sure they definitely have an audience. But for here, Computer America, this one has a twist on it that I think all of you will definitely like. So before we get into that, a few things I should mention, including computeramerica.com. That is our home, and there you'll find everything from a link to our guest website. So if you're driving, if you're busy, don't worry, we have you covered. You can check it out there. We also have a contest that you can enter, sponsored by Logitech. That's right. And let's see. And last thing is a live video portion where you can watch Computer America and not just listen. And that's going to be pretty helpful for today's show because, we're going to be giving examples of what we're talking about with our guests today, and you can see them as we talk about them. But don't worry, still a radio show, and we definitely, consider that our primary medium. So with that being said, I think we're just going to go ahead, jump into it, get our guest on, and talk about this because this is something I think a lot of people predicted, but and we've certainly seen elements of it. But to see this actually come to life is and be able to talk with someone who has done this is of course very exciting. So once again, welcome onto the show, Mr. Dave Room, who is with Balanced Edutainment and the author of Pajamas. Dave, thank you for coming on. Sorry, just 1 second. Sorry, did that. All right, I apologize. One more time. Welcome, Dave.
Hey, Ben, how are you doing?
There we go. We're all good now. Yeah, doing great. Thank you so much, and hope you are well as well. So I think a good place to start, as we do with most of our guests, is at the beginning. And why don't you give us a little bit of background of yourself and how Balanced Edutainment and Pajamas kind of relate to each other? Just lay the groundwork for your product, the company, and yourself.
I would say that I'm a father, a storyteller, and a shift shaper. But my most important identifier is Malia's papa. Malia is my 15-year-old daughter. And when she was about 2 weeks old, her mother laid her on my chest and she just inched up into my neck. At that moment, I had this feeling go all through my body. And I knew that something had changed. A couple days later, I realized that when she's a young adult, I need to be able to look her in the eyes and tell her I did absolutely everything that I could to make this world a more peaceful, joyful, and loving place. So I didn't know what that was actually, what that quest was going to be, but it's landed me here, having started Balanced Edutainment about 6 years ago. And our primary project with Balance has been Pajamas and continues to be Pajamas. So Pajamas is the first augmented reality cartoon character brand of Balanced Edutainment.
Very, very cool. Yeah, and I think you laid it out there. I'm very glad that you had that, that epiphany with your daughter, and that it shaped, kind of what you've done here. Of course, mixing that with technology and children's books. I mean, I just have to say that first of all, I don't say this because I really believe it, but I think that there's this thing about children's book that it's really, really easy to do. People can pump them out, 30 a month or, hundreds of them a year. But to hear you say that you've been, with Balanced Education, or you started about 6 years ago, and you've been developing a single children's, kind of character, with a single book, and I'm sure a single story arc. for a number of months, like you're putting a lot of effort into Pacha's Pajamas. So why don't you kind of give us an example of, kind of how Pacha's Pajamas started? How did you decide on this character and not just make like, the shotgun effect and just make a dozen characters with a dozen stories and just try to appeal to everyone with everything?
Pacha's Pajamas started in the brain of my co-author Aaron Abelman about 15 years ago. He had been spending a fair amount of time with his younger brother around bedtime. He was telling his younger brother stories, and he came upon this one story that just continued to resonate over and over with his brother. And there were just so many different jumping off points from that story that he knew something was there. The story was about a bunch of animals of all different types coming together to throw a huge festival in nature and to talk about the things and sing about the things and dance about the things that were really exciting to them. He was telling his brother this story, and each night it would get different characters would get involved, and different animals, different plants would perform. His brother loved it. He knew something was there. Fast forward about 6 or 7 years, and he was pitching it to a lot of people, and I happened to be one of his friends at that time. He told me about it. It seemed pretty interesting. And after a period of a couple months, we decided to actually work on it together and develop it. At that point, it was called Pachamama's Pajamas. Pachamama is another name for Mother Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And this story about the animals had a little girl named Pacha show up on the second to last page. When Aaron and I got together, one of the first things we did was make the story about the little girl and make her be the first thing that happens in the book and center the story around a little girl so it would be relatable to other kids and other kids can see themselves in the book and in the dream adventure. So that's how it actually changed from Pachamama's Pajamas to Pacha's Pajamas.
I got you. I got you. So, and that's very interesting beginning, and obviously you touched on a couple themes there that people are going to be able to find in the book. Obviously, there are themes of being a conservation. That's the word. I knew I'd find it eventually. Conservation. Looking out for the environment, things like that. That I think the coming up generation not only is just passionate about, but of course we need more passionate people. So let's talk about, what kind of medium you actually designed here, because is there a physical book that you have? Is this something available, through things like iPad and Kindle? What is the actual medium? And then we'll jump into how you've actually blended augmented reality into this experience.
Well, the actual medium is a paperback book. I'm holding it up. I don't know if
you see it?
the viewers can see this, but I guess the radio listeners can't. But it's a normal paperback book, about 6 by 9. It's about 3/4 of an inch thick, and it's got a bunch of black and white illustrations in it. So the medium is the normal book.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing different about it. You can see that it has this little Z book insignia on the upper left right hand corner, and that's just to show that this is in fact an augmented reality book. It's a book that comes to life.
Right. So, and like I said before, augmented reality, I'd say about 3 years ago, it was maybe unheard of. Nowadays, between Microsoft and a lot of other work that a lot of other people are doing, I think augmented reality has a place in people's minds, but why for a children's book? I mean, we've seen it in training for corporate scenarios. We've seen it in giving directions for people. We've seen it, of course, playing games on your phone like Pokemon Go. But why did you feel this was a good medium to explore?
Well, we've been looking at the trends with literacy rates and just noticing that in the last 7 years, people are just not reading literature anymore. Okay, let me step back. Much less people are reading literature these days, and you can look at the information from the National Endowment of the Arts and see that. Why is that? It's in our estimation, because kids are on cell phones and tablets so much. If you look at scholastic data, you can see that cell phone and tablet, basically screens, uh, device use is increasing at an unprecedented level. We're up to the point where kids are getting most of their media, more of their media is coming from those devices than the other devices that had traditionally been the leaders, like television. So we saw that there was an opportunity here if we were able to incorporate some really cool technology that's used on these devices, but that leads them back to the physical book, to literacy, to literature. So that was the thought was we can actually get reluctant readers to open up a book because we've added a technological component that's going to be exciting to them.
And just personally, I have a friend who works for the Florida School Board, and we were talking about it, and they found that more to your point, that children just weren't reading. High school students, middle school students, elementary school, they just weren't reading as much. And something that I've always done natively that I didn't realize other people didn't do was when I read, I make essentially a movie, or I see pictures in my head of what the text actually conveys. And for a lot of students out there, they don't have that. They don't have images that show up in their head when you describe a person. They read the words, and they have to try really hard to remember the words so that they can call back to them, but they don't get that picture in their head. And I think what you're doing is really great by giving kids that picture. It helps them kind of associate the words with something that they can put in their head. And literacy rate does go up when it's easier, more fluid, more natural. So this technology super exciting. And just again, speaking to members of school boards and things like that, I mean, have there been any I don't want to say studies because it may be a bit early for that, but any anecdotal experiences you've had from readers, maybe parents of readers that that they're really interested in this part where maybe more traditional books they haven't been?
Yeah, definitely. And there is at least one study that I know of that I found particularly interesting. It was done in Leiden University, which I believe is in the Netherlands, and they found that certain uses of multimedia, including the augmented reality use that we're using, where you focus the media directly on the story and you don't have interactive games and things that are taking them away from the story, those uses of multimedia can actually increase reading comprehension and expressive vocabulary, as well as other literacy skills. So I think that the studies show that the appropriate use of this technology is very helpful. What we found in the field is that this technology makes kids want to read the book, or at least want to pick up the book. And it really depends on the kid. There are a small fraction of them that will go through all the animations in the book really quickly, like over a period of, say, 10 to 15 minutes, and they'll actually feel like they got the entire story and they're good. That's the minority. The majority of kids will either want to go through all the animations and then go back and read it and say, "Hey, I want to buy this. Mama, can you buy this for me?" Or they'll actually just want to read and then do the animation and go through with the story as we've laid it out. So we get several different types of reactions, but I say the most frequent is that kids want to buy the book and have it and read it and go through it with the illustrations, either all at once and then come back and read it, or they want to go piecemeal where they read and do the animation and read and next animation, read and next animation, which is what we designed it for.
Right. So, and getting back to the medium, obviously physical book, you can pick it up, I'm sure, in bookstores. And I mean, it has that logo for AR. How is that AR really implemented? Do you need a phone or tablet, or is this something that I can't really think of any other way to implement it, but how is the AR actually done?
Well, the way it will be done in the future is with some glasses,
Right.
augmented reality glasses, but we're not quite there yet. So at the moment, you're using a smart device. It'd be a phone or a tablet, one of the newer ones.
Oh yeah, right. So and obviously, do you have an app, or is this that you download through the App Store, Google Play, iTunes, yada yada?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got an app. It's called Pacha Live. It's available
Oh,
both in the App Store and in Google Play.
very important to remember that. So, and I'm sure the book, the physical book itself will tell you, to go out and check this out. But I do like very much that you didn't put, yeah, hey, check that illustrations and right there. I definitely do like that you did include illustrations and not just like little QR codes that, if you were reading it, then, if you didn't have an app, then the illustrations would, the QR codes would mean nothing. But the fact that you did put the illustrations does show that it can work just as a traditional book.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it means that traditional books that don't have augmented reality can be augmented without actually modifying them.
That's very true. And I was just thinking a couple minutes ago how cool this same technology could be if you put it in with some of the classics, some of the Dr. Seuss's, and just having the same kind of technology. Very, very cool. But another part of your whole project that I found super interesting was the technology side. That's of course why you're here. But another side is you got a lot of different well, no other way to put it, celebrities to kind of be a part of the book. And why don't you talk about maybe guest voice actors, because if you do have that technology side, you can invite some people to do some very cool things with this.
Absolutely. We're so happy that we were able to get Yassine Bey, otherwise known as Mos Def, as our narrator. That was just a big win for us, and he did such a splendid job. It's really amazing the flow that he brings to the story. The way the story is laid out, it's actually over an audio track that has a beat. So he's actually reading to the beat, and he just does an amazing job. Cheech Marin is the mushroom Senor Champion, and he's the one who has the big idea to have a nature festival to bring all species together. We can talk a little bit about the story later, so
Sure.
you'll understand how he fits in. Talib Kweli performs as a butterfly. He does a rap called Butterfly Life that's part hip hop, part science lesson. You find out that they have 16 legs and six pair of eyes. So there's some really great stuff in that he did in his rap that he brought to the project, which by the way, when he was recording, it was amazing. He came in to the studio and he said, so what do you want me to talk about? I thought we had already told him, but anyway, we said, okay, well, you're going to be rapping from the standpoint of a butterfly. He said, okay, well, I'm just going to go over here and sit in the corner for a few minutes. And he went over, turned on his computer, and I think he went to Wikipedia and some other sites, and he's writing. Then all of a sudden he says, "Now I want you all to put on the beat." So we put on the beat and had it go on loop probably about 15 times or so. So for like the next hour, he was listening to that, and he was continuing to write. And then about an hour, like I said, an hour later, he said, "All right, I'm ready." He just gets down and you
Yeah.
just belts it out. Amazing.
I think that less talented people would take much longer to get into the headspace of a butterfly. That is, truly incredible when you see a professional like that work. And I'm sure, the talent that it lended to your story, very, very entertaining. So, and I was about to say very entertaining for kids, but, obviously this seems like something that, if a parent is working with a kid, they'll at least be entertained, while they're doing it with their kid. But what audiences did you kind of intend for the story to reach out to?
Well, we wrote it for 8 to 12 years old. It's a standard young reader book. But what we found is that younger kids really enjoy reading it with their parents. They love the story as well. And parents feel like it's really awesome for younger kids to get into this story. In that situation, usually the kid will be reading with the parent and the kid would operate the augmented reality. It works out really well. It's a really special time for kids and parents to be able to come together and read something that they actually both can enjoy. Like you said, we've had many parents say, you know what, I learned as much as my kid from this book. It's got fun facts about the different animals on Pacha's pajamas, and there's a lot of aspects of it that make it really enjoyable for adults as well. So it's as we say, for kids of all ages, and we're hoping that some kids will get some of the same types of awareness that we're trying to work with kids on through this book and through conversations with their kids after the kid or they and their kid have read the book.
Right. So let's talk about the awareness that you're trying to bring, because obviously there seem to be a number of themes here that you really want to drive home. And so, yeah, let's talk about the story. And I don't think I want you to give everything away, but what can people expect from the story?
All right. Can I give you kind of my overall intention first
Go for it.
with the book? Okay, so my overall intention, or at least the team's overall intention, was really to translate ancient ways of seeing our relationships into the language of today's kids. And when I say ancient ways of seeing our relationships, I'm speaking of the way that our distant ancestors and current indigenous people, as well as a growing segment of people now, are thinking that we are deeply connected to the natural world, and that we are deeply connected to one another, and we're deeply connected to ourselves, that we are totally connected beings. And they revere nature. They understand that we're part of nature, and that we need to take care of nature, and that we need to do our part, and the things that we do have impacts on nature, and that we can change what we do to have a different impact. So this was the intention, really, was to bring that way of thinking about the world to the language of today's kids. And when I say the language of today's kids, I mean not only the text, the story, and entertainment story that's going to grab today's kids, but also by the illustrations that we use, and having videos, and then having this augmented reality component as well is another way of putting this into the language of today's kids.
I
So, yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just find the story a bit ironic, and I mean that in the best way possible. But I mean, kids of today, and I'm talking more about those who grow up in cities. If you grow up in a major city, you may never walk through a true forest. You may never interact with anything more severe than a raccoon, a squirrel, birds. I mean, a lot of kids nowadays are growing up in cities that they're so far removed from nature that, when you talk about being reliant on nature, all they know is, streets, cars, people, police, firemen. Like, it's so far removed from the natural world. And, do you think that's a hurdle, that there just isn't that connection with, you're saying that you want to impart what, kind of people used to feel like, but I feel like back then you did rely on nature to grow your crops, to give you clean drinking water, to give you materials to survive the elements. That's not there anymore. So do you think there's any kind of disconnect there between kids growing up without nature, and then you saying that we are, and I completely agree, we are reliant on nature, it's just not as seen as much in today's day and age?
Yeah, you're totally right. There's a disconnect. And actually, there's a group of people that believe that it's, in fact, what you might call a syndrome. It's nature deficit disorder.
Mm-hmm.
It gives us a sense of apathy. It gives us a sense of ungroundedness, and there's a lot of other things that they believe come along with this nature deficit disorder. But it's true that it is there, because the way we've set up society is just not clear that we are actually part of nature based on, as you said, how we're living. But the truth of the matter is that nature provides every aspect of the air, the water, the food,
Mm-hmm.
all these things that we need on a daily basis, the things that we really need. Those are actually provided by nature. Now, yes, humans become the middleman, and so there's a company or an organization that provides the water and makes that river run out your faucet, but that was once a river,
Right.
and in some ways still is a river, but we're just not seeing it as a river coming through our faucet.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and so and so I think it's a very important lesson to, of course, learn, and I think it, in a lot of ways it may be a lot of kids' first introduction to, even these fundamental ideas that I think anyone out there who has driven far enough out into the mountains, the country, it's going to become very apparent very, very quickly. So, and I hate to do this to you, Dave. We have maybe 5 more minutes left. So let's talk about the future of this, because you mentioned this has been in production, a story in someone's head for 15 years. This is a company for 6 years. Let's talk about AR in the future, and more specifically, Pajamas. I mean, where are you hoping to kind of take this? Because is this a story that's going to continue to evolve in multimedia? Is there going to be a book 2 coming out soon? How do you see this playing out?
Pajamas is a book series. The dream world, her dream world, is created by her pajamas. So she's going to have another book called Foodlandia. That's the next one. And in that book, her pajamas have coconut, blueberry, jalapeno, corn, avocado, and she goes to a world called Foodlandia where everything is made out of food. There's white bread neighborhoods and wheat bread neighborhoods, and the Emperor Hamburgoni, his minion fries, they have lanced the cantaloupe sun, which is causing the climate to change. Popsicle Mountain is melting. Broccoli Forest is charred, and we're just wondering whether Pacha and her brother Paco can save the day before breakfast.
That is a very dire situation. And by the way, I was just reading the some of the background. I think it's for the first book with the animals in Earth Day, but she has an asthma attack before she goes to bed. And, personally, as someone with asthma, just another way that, felt a little bit more connected with her story. So, unfortunately, I never had this grand adventure. I just had an inhaler, but at the same time, still pretty darn cool. So, talk about the future of augmented reality. I think you touched on it a little bit earlier when you said that phones and, smartphones and tablets, they're a middleman, but eventually you're hoping for glasses, aren't you? Where do you think AR in books is eventually going?
Wow. AR in books, that's a big topic. Okay, first of all, I'll say that I believe that many different categories of books are going to be augmented reality enabled. So it's not only going to be children's books, but you'll have comic books, you'll have graphic novels, you may have magazines. You'll definitely have textbooks. Imagine a physics textbook. Now you have a static picture of an atom.
Mm-hmm.
Just imagine how much more dynamic and how much richer from a learning standpoint that would be if you could actually see the protons, the neutrons moving and see how they relate to each other in movement. That would be extremely powerful. So I think we're going to see textbooks coming up pretty soon. You also see catalogs, nonfiction books, recipe books, self-help books, encyclopedias. All these things can benefit from people having information brought up to them with contextual relevance. So what I'm looking at the moment within the book, that I'm on whatever page I'm on, mm-hmm. The augmented reality will be able to bring up multimedia information that's associated with what I'm trying to get more information about. That's very powerful. In addition, there's the possibility that we'll be able to embed conversations within the book through augmented reality. So there would be this notion where we would come to a section in this book, and it's actually a section that I'm particularly interested in. There may be a lot of other people in the world that'd be interested in having a conversation around this section. So that's another place I see it going. I also see the possibility of having virtual reality experiences embedded in books. So you come to a certain page and there's some kind of indication that suggests that you need to put on some virtual reality goggles. You go ahead and do that, and there's an experience that's directly related to what you're seeing in books.
Right. And Dave, music means we're going to take a break. Would you mind staying around just for a couple minutes just to give this a proper send-off?
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. So everyone out there, music means we're going to take a break. We'll be right back with Dave Room, author of Pacha's Pajamas. And everyone, stay tuned. More Computer America right after this.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 31 minutes past the hour, and our guest was kind enough to stay over just to just wrap this up because I didn't want to leave with a cliffhanger. But you're right, and Dave, of course, Dave, you brought up a lot there real quick, and I feel like you were trying to squeeze it in, but we can decompress a little bit. You have a lot of ideas for this technology, and I don't think you're alone because part of other companies that we've had here on the show, they make, we've had everything from Hollywood directors to, mom and pop operations to, like Pearson, the actual book people, that they see this technology as the inevitable future, but it has to be done right. So I'm going to ask you this, and I think you're going to be biased, but it's okay. Do you think Pacha's Pajamas does AR right, or is there something that you're kind of waiting or hoping that you're going to be able to do more with your book series or just, in books in general?
Pacha's Pajamas is a great example of how to do it right in this particular case with marker-based augmented reality. I think it's really powerful to do it in a way where the content is directly related to the story and you don't have a lot of interactive stuff that kids are playing and doing games where they're taken away from the story. So I feel like we've definitely done it right. And there's also a lot of different other ways that we can go with it. I'm really interested in exploring and going further with the technology and seeing how we can make it a really powerful tool for teachers. There's a lot of folks in the EdTech space that are beginning to look at augmented reality and virtual reality. They're calling it extended reality now, so XR. So I'd love to experiment more with that and push forward. But right now, I'll say that Pacha's Pajamas is probably the best example of an augmented reality book, especially one that's really focused on having the child gain from the reading experience. There's a couple things I do want to just touch on before we go, if we have time. One is I do want to give you an outline of the story. And then the second thing, I want to kind of blow your mind with kind of the 5-year idea of where augmented reality books could go.
Let's start with the story. Absolutely.
Okay. So the story, when Pacha's a little girl with big dreams. Her dreams are bigger than the elephant at the zoo. She's got giant dreams. They're bigger than the Andes Mountain, which is the homeland of her parents. When she goes to sleep, the plants and animals on her pajamas, they become her guides in a dream adventure to learn more about herself and her connection to the natural world. And in this particular dream, she ends up going to the jungle and she finds all these animals and plants lamenting the state of their home. There's things happening to their home. They don't really know why. So the climate is changing. The watering holes have less water in them. when the birds leave, sometimes they come back and their trees are gone. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of things happening. They don't know what to do, and a mushroom pops up and says, why is everybody so down in the dumps? We can change anything. And the other animals, they're pretty skeptical. And then, what are you talking about? What can we do? And he says, well, let's throw a nature festival. Let's bring all the species together so we can figure out what to do. This Pacha gets together with all these animals. They throw this huge festival in nature, and at the end of it, we have a really sweet scene that I'm not going to give away, but it's a powerful journey for them to go through this experience of coming together as one to address their issues. And as I was saying, there's going to be other books in the series that they'll be totally different, in that she'll be going to different places based on what pajamas she's wearing.
Makes perfect sense. And no, it sounds like very hopeful and very, kind of you can do something. And, the old adage of think globally, act locally, as in just, you yourself can make positive change. And, imparting those words to, I think, a younger and younger generation makes perfect sense. So, and the other part, that you really wanted to touch on was, kind of where you see in 5 years AR books and just AR in general kind of going for people, because we've seen, and I kid you not, that we do news stories almost every single day. It's beyond just Pokemon Go. It's beyond just simple entertainment. It really does add another layer to what we all kind of know already. So where do you see this? Because I've heard a lot of great expectations, and you say that you can blow my mind, because I think my mind's already blown. So please reblow it.
All right. So imagine that we have a book. It doesn't have to be a children's book; it could be any book. And in fact, it's a subject that you're particularly interested in, nonfiction subject that you're particularly interested in. You're going through and you find a paragraph that's particularly interesting to you. You want to know more about it. You bring out your augmented reality app. You put it over that paragraph, and up pops up the ability for you to write notes
Mm-hmm.
in the virtual space next to the book. So you can then write some notes, and you just note down some things that you thought were particularly interesting. And you also see that there's been many other notes that other people have already noted on that particular paragraph or that particular sentence that you're looking at. So you can then kind of look through their notes or do a search through them, and you can look at ones that are from your friends or from groups that you're looking at, because those can rise to the top easier. Basically, there's a set of information that have been created by people who have read that book that you now have access to. And you also have the opportunity to start a conversation. You could have a conversation that's timed and meant to be synchronous, where everybody's on at the same time, and just kind of put an invitation out there right there in the augmented reality in the book. Or you could just have an asynchronous conversation, more like a messaging or chat where public conversation, or make it private with other people that you want around that particular passage of the book. So that's great. I mean, would you agree that I don't think that's mind blowing, but that would be something. Could that be interesting to you?
I mean, that was one of the best parts of buying used college textbooks, or getting, previous classmates' books, was that you could see their notes, you could see their highlights, you could see, what they found interesting or what they found important, relevant, be it in any kind of subject. And it helped. I mean, it helped to see what other people could do, rather than just giving you a giant bulk collection of every detail. And no, you're right. I mean, being able to do that, and especially the idea that textbooks are very not a social thing, definitely by any stretch of the imagination. You read them alone, you study them alone, and then you take the information out of them to a group setting. So you kind of want to bring a group setting to the textbook.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also think about this. Let's say you start annotating all kinds of books in the augmented reality. That information actually could be available to you outside of augmented reality. So then you could go to your computer or to your phone, and you could actually have access to the notes that you've made in all of the books that
Hmm.
you've read in the last 5 years. So you wouldn't have to go back to the book and to the column to get the notes. They're there for you virtually and searchable, et cetera. So I think that's valuable as well.
I think that, and I don't expect you to do it. Maybe one of our listeners wants to take it and transform how education is done in the United States. But one of my something that just popped into my head while talking to you was something along the lines of being able to take, let's say, a history textbook, let's say ancient Roman civilization, and you can go from you get like a giant general overview, and then you can poke through as much as you want. So if you wanted to highlight the battle of, XYZ, it would zoom into the battle of XYZ, give you all the information on that. And then, the great military leader being Alexander the Great or something like that, you could zoom in on that. If you wanted to do, Carthage, if you wanted to zoom in on that. I mean, and just having not only education, but not only information, but then being able to naturally flow from one interesting subject or through a timeline as you see fit, I think would make, and I know we're focusing on the education, but it would make education that much more natural, I feel, because right now it's a course and it has to fit because it's just too hard to navigate otherwise. You're right. There's a lot of exciting room to grow in this field.
Yeah, and you almost well, you kind of touched on the next level of what I wanted to talk about. And that is, so you're not only able to do notes, see other people's notes, potentially start conversations, but what if you could link pieces of a paragraph of one book about Carthage, for example, to another book that has a paragraph about Carthage,
Yeah.
or has a picture of Carthage, or has a picture with a piece of it that has Carthage in it? What if you could link um, a, a very granular piece of one book to a very granular piece of another book through augmented reality, and we could crowdsource the linkages between all the books in the world?
Yeah, you'd be able to, kind of like a Wikipedia does, kind of like whenever you see a highlighted text and you can explore that idea, and the next thing you know, you're 6 hours into a Wikipedia thing where you started in ancient Greece and then you end up in talking about virtual reality. It's the flow of ideas. So no, you're right. There's certainly a lot of ways you could take this, and I'm excited to see what you do with your children's books, and then kind of how you take it further. My last question for you, and this is going to get personal, but what does your daughter think of all this? What does your daughter think of what you're doing here with these books?
She thinks it's cool. I think it would be cooler if it was someone else rather than her father. That's just the dynamic we have, I guess. But the cool thing about it for me is that my daughter is the voice of Pacha. She's involved in our Indiegogo campaign. She's in the video. She did an amazing job. She's so photogenic, and I'm just on screen. She's really amazing. So we've been so blessed to have her involved with the project. She's given advice at many, many different stages over the last 6 years, and it wouldn't be the same project without her.
Very cool to hear that she's so involved. And folks, if you want to check out more, pachaspajamas.com, and there's even a YouTube video. I believe that's your daughter right there, front and center. But where can people find the book? Is it only available online? And how can people get their hands on it?
The best way to get it right now is through Indiegogo. Go to Indiegogo.com and search for Pacha. You're going to come up with Pacha's Z book, a kid's book that comes to life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got all the information there. Plus, it's got an amazing special where when you buy the book, you'll get a free album,
Right?
album with all the music to it, along with the book, which is something we haven't done before. So that's the best way to get it for the next month.
Right. And folks, we'll, of course, put a link to the Indiegogo campaign. Looks like you guys just launched not too long ago. And yeah, you can check it out there. Lots of different, of course, Indiegogo goes like it does. And, a lot of different offers. And yeah, it looks like you can buy the book right there, Early Bird Special. So, unless we miss anything, Dave, I want to say thank you for coming on. Very interesting conversation about books. I know that's a very contradictory sentence, but VR books, it is a space to explore. And Pacha's Pajamas. Dave, thank you so much.
Oh, Ben, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, our pleasure. And once again, everyone, computeramerica.com, a link to everything right there. But until next time, Dave, thank you. And please come back on. Next time you have, I was about to say expansion technology. That's part of it. The next time you have a sequel or something like that, please feel free to come on the show. Love to talk again.
Oh, perfect. I look forward to it. Thanks so much, Ben.
All right, have a great day. And everyone, there he goes, Mr. Dave Room. So with that being said, and yes, we definitely use Skype for that interview. But in the meantime, Dave Room, check that out. And we, one last time, available in the show notes. So why don't we go ahead and move on to computer and technology news. And this is a segment dedicated to everything and anything talking about, of course, well, the latest in news. And we have a couple of stories. We might not get to all of them because, fortunately, I'm not going to say unfortunately, fortunately, our guests ran long. But yeah, there's some that I really wanted to touch on. So here we go. Computer and technology news brought to you by Fire Dragon Security. Here we go. All right. So I think our first story is going to be a really short one. And there's not a lot of ways that you could take this, but here we go. This is from Engadget. And just a small update, again, very, very quick. You may have been noticing around the internet, people are typing, but they're typing with their phones, and Apple has been auto-correcting I to the capital letter A, and then a question mark inside a box. And it's not from anyone's, poor typing skills, but rather Apple had been auto-correcting it on certain devices for certain users. This has not been everyone, just certain users. But Apple indeed pushes out iOS 11.1.1. Now, the first two numbers, if you are not familiar with software updates, the first two numbers indicate a very major, kind of refresh of the product. iOS 11 just came out with the new iPhone 8 and iPhone 10 device releases. The 0.1 is a moderate fix or a moderate increase, adds new features and sometimes major bug fixes, things like that. And then the 0.1 after the third 0.1 indicates a minor bug fix or a minor patch. So this thing is almost entirely dedicated to the fixing of the autocorrect bug. And also it can, and they're saying that, the 11.1 was the fix for the WPA2 crack vulnerability. And now 0.1 is, of course, the one changing the letter I to gibberish. So with that being said, folks, if you have iOS and you are affected by this problem, there you go. Update it right away. All right. Again, I told you that'd be quick. That's all we have to say on that. This next one, also from Gadget, though, luckily for us. This from Saqib Shah. And Las Vegas self-driving bus crashes within the first hour of service. Now, to be fair, before we start the article, don't want to get too clickbaity with this. The bus, I don't believe, was at fault for this incident. But it's true. The first self-driving bus indeed did have a crash or an incident within the first hour of service. No one was harmed. And do not worry, citations were issued. But here we go, saying that Las Vegas's self-driving shuttle service marked its return by getting into a minor collision, according to local NBC news station KSNV News 3. And a French startup, Navia, so kind of like Navigate, but Navia, autonomous electric vehicle shuffles at around 15 miles an hour on a 0.6-mile circuit in downtown Fremont East District. So very, very close course. And, of course, very, very slow. I mean, 50 miles an hour, it's a bit, but I don't think I've ever heard of anyone hurting too bad from a 15-mile-an-hour collision. But here we go, just an hour into its year-long trial. And by the way, this followed a successful stint in January. The shuttle was hit by a delivery truck that was backing up. And there you go. The bus was hit. Not the bus hit, but the bus was hit. None of the 8 passengers aboard the driverless vehicle suffered injuries, and neither did the truck driver. Instead, the front bumper of the shuttle, of the bus, took the brunt of the damage. And a spokesperson from AAA, which is sponsoring the latest pilot program, took to Twitter and said that the incident was human error on the part of the truck driver. So let's see if we can just skip along here into the story. They're saying that the trial is set to continue, but the incident will do little to ease the concerns of those skeptical about self-driving cars. Although at the same time, to make this very clear, the self-driving bus, not at fault, and indeed the delivery truck backed into the car. It can happen to anyone, and it could definitely happen to a self-driving car test. They said that the free autonomous shuttle service was the first of its kind in the U.S. In addition, Navia's 15-passenger ARMA vehicles are also the star of a similar program at the University of Michigan. And its tech will soon start powering driverless taxis that can reach top speeds of 55 miles an hour. Yeah, a bit faster from 15. Let's hope the company learns from this incident and the remainder of the testing. And hey, that's the point of testing. You make mistakes, you learn from them, you adapt. It's kind of how you get it done. But I guess now they have to, because part of me feels like there's not much a self-driving car should do in this situation. If someone backs up into a self-driving car, should the self-driving car have the capability to do some things that I think humans would be perfectly capable of doing, such as backing up to avoid a collision, or should it just stay there, kind of get hit if it's not going to be too bad, mitigate as much as it can? But of course, hey, if you back up in this situation, you might have hit another car, another passenger. I feel like the self-driving car did exactly what it was supposed to do. So there you have it. Indeed, one of the first self-driving vehicles in the first day of returning to service gets into an accident. Not its fault, but still did. All right, let's see. I think there was another one that I really wanted to cover. And, oh yeah, it was the one about Facebook. And Sean Parker. This is... so Sean Parker, he is the founder of Napster. You may know them. They stole music, but not anymore. So Sean Parker, Facebook was designed to exploit human vulnerability. And Sean Parker, the founder of Napster and former president of Facebook, said that the thought process behind building the social media giant was, quote, how do we consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible? And Parker was interviewed by Axios' Mike Allen Wednesday. So they have a quote here saying that means we needed to sort of give you a little dopamine hit every once in a while because someone liked you or commented on a photo or post or whatever. It's a social validation feedback loop. You are exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology where the inventors understood this consciously and we did it anyways. See, I don't even take that as like a bad thing. If you don't think that technology and, user interfaces and these experiences that they're giving you, Facebook included, and every other little smartphone app that you download or any other social media giant that you may use, they do the exact same thing. It's as much psychology as it is technology. And if you can have an engaged user, and not just an engaged user, but a continually grossly invested user, that's a good market to have. So they said that by the time he left the stage, he jokingly said that Mark Zuckerberg will probably block his account after reading this, saying that when Facebook was getting going, I had these people who would come up to me and they would say, I'm not on social media. And I would say, okay, you will be. And then they would say, no, I value my real life interactions. I value the moment. I value the present. I value intimacy. And then Sean Parker would say, we'll get you eventually. And, I saw it in real time. I was at dinner with my parents, and some of their longtime friends, they've known them for a number of decades. I saw it happen in real time where they were on Facebook. They talk with old friends, family through Facebook almost exclusively. And where my parents had made a conscious decision to not be on Facebook, well, they were essentially getting browbeaten by people who were invested in Facebook to get on the social media platform so that they could interact with them, even though they were out to lunch with them. Even though you still get that kind of situation. So I think he's completely right. And there's a couple very interesting quotes here that you can, kind of read up in the show notes. Let's see. Let's get one other quote in here saying, quote, and again from Sean Parker. And that means we need to sort of give, no, actually we just read that one. They said that, I don't know if I really understand the consequences of what I was saying because of the unintended consequences of a network when it grows to 1 billion or 2 billion people, and it literally changes your relationship with society and with each other. It probably interferes with productivity in very weird ways, and God only knows what it's going to do to our children's brains. This is new territory indeed, and we all have to face it. So, with that being said, why don't we go ahead and move on to our next article, because again, we are short on time, but still very interesting. All right, so for our last story, why don't we talk about Intel? Intel and their new acquisition from Apple and AMD. And this is pretty cool because this is going to show where Intel is looking to, kind of take their product line next. And it could be a possibility that in a couple years, your next graphics card will be Intel, not NVIDIA, not AMD, but rather Intel itself. So Intel hires Apple and AMD veteran to lead the development of its own graphics chips. Very interesting. So for all its Silicon Valley expertise and billions of dollars invested in research, Intel has never been a leader in graphics, though the company is now hoping to correct that situation with their recent acquisition. And check this out, they picked up AMD's graphics chief, Raja Koduri, who until this week had served as AMD's senior vice president and chief of architect of the Radeon Technologies graphics division, and is now taking up the same position at Intel. Basically, AMD's graphics boss is about to become Intel's graphics boss. And they said that Intel was forming a new core and visual computing group with Koduri will be leading, and the stated intent being to unify the company's efforts with graphics chips across its full range of products. Interesting. And in Koduri's words, it's an opportunity to drive a unified architecture vision across Intel's world-leading IP portfolio and help accelerate the data revolution. I think essentially what they're saying there is that currently you go to Intel when you need processor chips. You go to Intel when you need integrated system on chips. But then you go somewhere else for the graphics part. You go to AMD, you go to NVIDIA, and that's who you go to. Looks like Intel is looking to change that. So they said that high-end Intel graphics cards are on the horizon, where Intel has agreed to build processors with AMD graphics on board. That's another story we didn't do. Definitely worth checking out. But they said that these new chips are intended for laptops and will be designed to sate the greater pixel pushing power of serious gamers. And of course, this is a direct challenge to NVIDIA. But it must sting for Intel to have to use AMD's tech to make it a reality. So, to rebalance its competitive position, Intel has invested in acquiring AMD's talent, not just its designs. Intel is looking to be a much bigger player in personal computers and technology as we know it. As if that could have happened, looks like Intel is looking to do it. So there you have it, folks. We're just out of time. Music means we are done here for today. Thank you for joining us here on Computer America. had a lot of fun talking today, and of course, a lot of fun talking to our guest. And yeah, if you miss any part of the show, check it out, computeramerica.com. You can find the podcast version of the show, and you can find the video and audio archives around the internet. And of course, wherever great shows are found. Folks, tomorrow, Veterans Day, Computer America will be observing, and we will not be having a live show tomorrow. So instead, we will have a best of computer and technology, a best of Computer America right after this. So in the meantime, everyone, have a great day. Thank you so much for tuning in. And hey, catch you next time here on Computer America. Have a good one. Catch you Monday. Bye-bye.